Go into enough Walmart stores, and the same frustrations start to sound less like bad luck and more like a pattern. The line at checkout crawls. The price on the shelf is not the price at the register. The app says an item is in stock, but the shelf is empty. And when you finally find an associate, the help feels rushed, scattered, or unavailable. None of that sounds dramatic on its own. That is exactly why it matters. Customer frustration usually does not begin with one huge failure. It begins with a dozen small ones, repeated until shoppers stop believing the trip will be worth it. Walmart knows checkout is a problem. Its own leadership has said nobody wants to stand in a checkout lane for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and that friction has to be engineered away. That is a telling admission, because it turns an everyday annoyance into a design flaw. If the biggest retailer in America has to talk about removing checkout pain, then shoppers have clearly been feeling it for a while. And once you start looking, the complaints are everywhere. Long waits, crowded aisles, self-checkout confusion, and the sense that a simple shopping run has become a test of patience. The numbers back up that feeling. In a 2025 Shopper Sentiment Scorecard, Walmart landed at 73 out of 100 in the general merchandise category, near the bottom. Sam's Club, also owned by Walmart, scored 85, and part of that difference came down to something simple. Customers could skip the line. That contrast matters. It shows people are not rejecting the brand because they hate value or convenience. They are reacting to friction. If one version of the business feels smooth and another feels slow, shoppers notice immediately. They may not use the language of operations or logistics, but they know when a trip feels easy, and they know when it feels like work. And that leads to the part that turns irritation into abandonment. In one consumer survey, 66% of shoppers said they had left a store without buying something in the previous 6 months. The biggest reason was out of stocks. More than half pointed to empty shelves. Long checkout lines came next. Then came the lack of associate support at self-checkout, and even locked up merchandise. That is the real story here. Shoppers are not just annoyed in the moment. They are making a decision. When the shelf is empty, when the line is too long, when help is nowhere to be found, the message they receive is simple. Your time is not being respected. That is why inconsistent stock hits so hard. It is not just about one missing product. It is about reliability. If the app says an item is there and the aisle says otherwise, trust starts to wobble. And once shoppers feel that wobble, they start checking twice. Then they start shopping elsewhere. Then they start assuming the trip will disappoint them before they even leave the house. That kind of erosion is quiet at first. It does not announce itself with a crisis. It shows up in smaller ways, like hesitation, skepticism, and the decision to skip the store entirely. Pricing creates the same problem, only faster. Walmart has been moving toward electronic shelf labels across thousands of stores, which is supposed to make pricing more efficient and accurate. In theory, that sounds practical. In practice, it can make shoppers more suspicious if they already feel burned. Because when prices can change quickly, the burden shifts to transparency. People want to know what they are paying, why they are paying it, and whether the number on the shelf will still match at checkout. That is the thing about pricing trust. It is fragile. It can survive one confusing moment, but it gets weaker every time the customer has to double check. And sometimes it is not just confusing. Sometimes it is a direct failure. Walmart has said a technical issue in March led to some customers being overcharged when price data did not flow properly to self-checkout kiosks at about 1,600 stores. Thousands of items were affected. The company said it prioritized refunds. But even when money is eventually corrected, the damage lingers. Nobody forgets the feeling of seeing a total that seems wrong. Nobody forgets having to question a receipt after a routine grocery run. That is the moment trust stops being abstract and becomes personal. Regulators have noticed that pattern too. In California, Walmart agreed to a multi-million-dollar settlement tied to allegations of overcharging and selling certain items with less weight than labeled. In Colorado, state inspectors found repeated shelf and register price discrepancies over multiple inspections, leading to another settlement and compliance requirements. These are not just legal footnotes, they are signals. They tell shoppers that price accuracy is not guaranteed every time they walk in, and that is a serious problem for a retailer built on everyday value. Because if value feels uncertain, the whole promise starts to crack. Uneven service adds another layer. It is easy to blame individual workers, but the deeper issue is often staffing pressure. Research based on thousands of workers found stores with self-checkout were more likely to report chronic understaffing. More workers said those stores were always or often understaffed. That makes sense when you think about the experience. The more a store pushes customers towards self-service, the more it depends on having enough people nearby to help when something goes wrong. Without that support, self-checkout stops feeling efficient and starts feeling like unpaid labor with a delay attached. Then there is the locked-up merchandise problem. What was once a quick grab from the shelf can turn into a hunt for someone with a key. Items that used to feel effortless now feel guarded, and shoppers notice. Some retailers say those measures are about theft. Others argue the constant locking up of everyday essentials pushes frustrated customers toward online alternatives. Either way, the impact on the customer is the same. A store visit that should have taken minutes now takes longer, requires more effort, and feels less welcoming. That is how convenience quietly turns into friction. Put all of this together, and the picture becomes clearer. The issue is not one cashier, one bad day, or one empty shelf. It is the accumulation. It is the growing sense that a basic shopping trip is no longer dependable. Shoppers expect three things from a store like Walmart: fair prices, available products, and a process that does not waste their time. When those expectations are missed again and again, frustration grows into suspicion. And suspicion grows into something more damaging: the feeling that the store no longer respects the customer's experience. That is why this matters beyond one chain. Walmart built its reputation on scale, savings, and reliability. If shoppers start expecting confusion instead of clarity, delays instead of speed, and uncertainty instead of trust, that reputation takes a hit no ad campaign can easily fix. Because in retail, trust is not a bonus. It is the whole game. It is what makes people come back after a long day, after a bad week, after 100 other choices. And when that trust starts to slip, shoppers do not need a speech to tell them. They feel it every time they reach the register. Tell us your Walmart breaking point in the comments.